All right, Gypsy, thank you for coming on the Barely Famous podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I read your book. Yeah, and I'm really excited to talk about it. I run an online book club, so this was right up my alley.
Oh, perfect.
You have been in the headlines for probably 10 years now. Does that sound about right?
About right, yeah.
Why now? Why are we writing a book now? Is there a reason?
Well, it's not exactly right now. I've been working on it for about 3 years.
Okay.
The portion that was the final pieces was editing.
This was technically her second book.
And that came after I got released.
Okay. So it's been a work in progress for a long time.
It has.
And there was some things in the book that I was surprised to read because, you know, we hear all kinds of things in the media and people come up with their own theories, but was writing this and sort of going through this entire process for you cathartic and sort of like therapy for you?
It was challenging at times because I had to kind of ask for information from family members because like I know my side of things, but I don't know the full picture. So I had to talk to family, I had to talk to, friends, to get a lot of information that I didn't know about. Right.
So do you ever talk about your relationship and where they stand today with Claude or Laura? Do you talk about that at all?
Laura has passed away. She passed away a few years ago. I don't speak with Claude. We live like literally one town apart. But I haven't run into him since I was actually.
Notice she's very uncomfortable answering that right there. And there's a lot of controversy saying how she is openly telling in interviews that her mother's family, that side, is very supportive of her doing the book, when it's been said in the past that they were very, very angry and not happy that she was doing a Lifetime series, the first book, that she's trying to be an influencer. So I'm not buying it. But definitely keep an eye on her body language.
Actually, little, so.
Do you know how he feels about the book?
I honestly don't know how he feels about the book. He's in his 80s, so I'm not really even sure if he even knows about the book.
Okay. I mean, he doesn't really need to know. Your truth is your truth, and I feel like at the end of the day he can't dispute what your perception of any of this was, right?
Correct.
I mean, I get that. So the people that you developed relationships with while you were in prison, do you talk to them still?
Fortunately, I can't. While I'm on parole, I can't have communication with them, but after.
I had to stop there because she's surprisingly not in trouble for it, but there's proof of it. Internet is forever. She's become friends with a content creator named Bree, and accidentally her and Bree were on a live having a conversation, and they were talking about her contacting somebody that she was incarcerated with, and Bree was telling her to pretty much just lie to your PO, lie to the parole officer. So it's funny that she's being very, oh no, I'm not allowed to do that.
I'm off parole, I can't.
And how long are you on parole for?
For about another 7 months.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 7 years.
No, about 7 months to go.
So what does that mean? So when you get released from prison, you go on parole for, what was the time frame?
For me, I spent 8.5 years locked up total.
Okay.
And then the remainder of the 1.5 years on parole.
Okay, and then once you're released from parole, you're done? Do you go on probation or anything like that?
I'm done. Like, the sentence is complete.
And then could you move out of state if you wanted to?
I could, yeah.
Do you have any plans to move out of Louisiana?
I don't know. We've been talking about it.
Yeah, because where is Ken from?
He's originally from Georgia, but he's moved around a lot. So he's lived in Dallas, he's lived in Seattle.
Right.
So he's moved around a lot.
Yeah, and all of those are kind of like, I guess, the South, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just a lot different. This is my first time in Louisiana, so.
This is not what the weather is like usually.
Okay, well, I brought a winter coat because I was like, I didn't know what to expect, and it's 30 degrees back home. So I was like, what is going on? So in the book, you talk about trying foods for the first time and having your salivary glands taken out. What does that even mean? And when you say that you were trying foods for the first time, what were the some of the things that you experienced with eating certain foods for the first time? Okay.
So certain foods my mother never let me eat, or the majority of my nutrition came from my feeding tube
Right.
and formula based nutrition.
All the way up until you were how old?
24. I was about, up
Oh,
until
wow.
the prime.
It's been speculated that there was times that she realized she could eat and drink some things and that she was sneaking it at night when her mother was sleeping.
When you don't have those glands anymore, what does that do for eating food?
So the salivary glands isn't exactly part of why I had the feeding tube.
Okay.
So the salivary glands was taken out after the feeding tube was
Okay.
already placed in. But what your salivary glands do is produce saliva. So if often you'll see me drink, lick my lips, that is often a sign that my mouth is really dry, because without the 2 salivary glands in my neck, I produce less saliva.
Did they tell you that was going to be a side effect, or were you too young at that point to understand like what that meant to
I
have?
wasn't told, so I had no idea what the side effects would have been.
That's so interesting. And there's no way to obviously replace them.
No, once they're out, it's taking organs out of you. You can't regrow them or put them back in.
Again, notice she got very uncomfortable. She seemed to be very upset at the very end of explaining that. I mean, it could be bothering her so much because it was traumatic, and she's reliving it. So you can't blame her for that.
Regular foods like blended and put through your feeding tube, or it was just
I mean,
strictly
that's
like
possible, but it's not recommended.
Okay.
The doctor gives you a specific routine on what you can and cannot put through a feeding tube, or, they don't recommend putting regular food through a feeding tube because it often gets stuck in the feeding tube itself.
And in the book, you talk about, the correctional facility that you were at. Does the word correctional in the name of a prison mean anything?
I think that it does. I think that the word correction often means to stop or to prevent. And prison definitely does that.
So you think that it's more of like a rehabilitation effort?
I think for some, I think it is very much based on what the inmate wants.
Okay.
So if the inmate wants to better him or herself, it will be productive.
Okay.
And if not, then they're just spending wasted time.
Okay. Because I know that there's like state prisons or federal prisons, but they don't necessarily always have the word correctional in the name of the.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
I don't know that for sure, but I know.
I was going to say that was a good question.
Noticed, or at least I think I have, and Alessandra's saying yes, so I'm going with yes. I want to dive headfirst into page 3 of the book. Obviously, I want people to go pick up the book and read it, buy it, all of that, but you used a metaphor where you talk about it was, your throat was going to be cut, or so it was more of like a life or death sort of situation.
Correct.
Can you sort of describe what that meant to you in a way that, people will hopefully want to go buy the book?
I think that, obviously we wanted, and we meaning me and my co-authors, wanted to convey a sense of urgency.
Okay.
Because a lot of people can't put themselves in the mindset of where I was at with the abuse and how desperate I felt. So having a statement like she was going to cut my throat, that statement stands out a lot. And so it transports the readers into my mind and emotion.
See, this is what I'm talking about. How come she's talking about the crime and she's making money off of it? You're not supposed to make any profit off of your crimes.
And so that's why it was so important to kind of say that and then go into the details of what I meant by that.
Right. It sort of paints the whole picture.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand. The book was very well written, and I was really impressed with how thorough it was. There were a couple things, and we'll get to it later on, about about Nick and some of the things that I didn't really know. I don't know if I just didn't follow his story as much, but in the book you said that you were in a silent standoff, right? So your mom was desperate to sort of keep control over you. Looking back, do you still feel the same way?
I do.
Yeah.
I just feel a little bit more humanity towards her now. Because after going through all like the research with family members, I started to learn that she seemed very self-isolated. She was just not someone that had a social life herself.
So is she saying that she actually regrets what she did now that she understands her mother, and possibly that her mother had some either mental and physical challenges that kind of affected her parenting skills with Gypsy? Possibly. She gets me so mad. She still does not acknowledge the fact that she manipulated Nick Godejohn to do what he did. I know she's not supposed to talk about it and not to talk about him, but how could you continue living your best life knowing that he is forever behind bars because you told him to do it?
It was very much keep us in a tiny bubble.
Do you think that that was intentional and she was aware of it? Or do you think it was more like she didn't really know that she was doing these things?
I think maybe both.
Okay.
I have feelings about both. So, I think that it was intentional to not correspond with our family, not correspond with my father. And so I think that part was intentional, but I don't think that maybe she was aware how that affected me in a negative way.
Okay. So maybe some of the other things that were happening were in relation to, self-isolating, but she wasn't really aware of what she was like, how deep this was going.
How much it hurts.
I think that your story has definitely brought more awareness to it for sure. If you had to guess, how many times do you think that you've been under anesthesia?
Probably over 100.
Wow.
And do you know what the side effects of that are? Like, do you have, I think I've read something about like short-term memory or long-term memory. Do you feel like you feel any side effects, long-term effects from it?
I haven't noticed any so far, which I feel like I'm blessed for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Going under anesthesia, when I was a kid, I didn't ask questions.
Right.
So it's like all the side effects and everything, all the dangers, was told to my mom, not to me.
Right. Right. Because you were a minor.
Right.
So that makes sense. You think that you had an addiction?
I absolutely do think that it was an addiction to painkillers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So by accident, or
she's actually been pretty open about this in past interviews.
were you already taking them and you felt the effects, and so you eventually, got to a point where you were abusing them? Or do you think that it was more by accident?
It was originally, my first exposure was from pain medication from after having surgery.
Right.
And so that was accidental. So it started off with, okay, they prescribed me this pain medicine. Oh, it makes me feel different. It makes me feel kind of numb. And so after that point, that's when I slowly started to take more and more and more and slowly abused it.
Okay. And your mom was aware of it, but didn't say anything?
Correct.
Because I think that's what I read in the book, and I was shocked by that.
Correct.
But that sort of fell into subconscious or conscious plan of, her kind of.
I don't know about you guys, but it kind of bothers me that whether it's true or not about her mother and that whole narrative, her mother's not here to defend herself. And it's still a rough situation. I'm still kind of torn when it comes to the mom. I don't think she was portrayed in this narrative accurately 100%. I think some of the things we see in the documentaries and even the movie adaptation, the act, I think it's a mixture of both angles. I don't know if it's true that she had Munchie House by proxy. She was never diagnosed with that while she was alive. And for them to diagnose her after life is weird. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can have characteristics and behaviors that fit that, but why didn't they see that before? They did say that she had other mental issues that came to play with her behaviors of how she treated Gypsy. It seems like she had OCD, anxiety. It's a very, very frustrating topic and situation when it comes to Gypsy and her mother, for sure.
Kind of keeping you close, it sort of helped keep you there, right?
Right.
That's so interesting. I always wonder with addiction, my mom's an addict and an alcoholic, and so I always wonder how sort of that can happen.
It's hard whenever you have someone, there's nobody there to tell you to stop or to pull you away from the edge, but instead encourage. So my mom was on pain medication herself, as well as Xanax. And so she would give me what we call a cocktail. And so that would be a mixture of oxycodone and Xanax together.
What was she about to say? It almost seemed like she was going to say fentanyl, right? Let's go back a second. That was weird.
What we call a cocktail. And so that would be a mixture of oxycodone and Xanax together.
Yeah, she was about to say fentanyl.
And what would that do? Would it put you to sleep or what?
Yes, and it put me in a state of numbness. And I liked being there.
And so would you spend a lot of time in that state of mind, you think?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, but as a mom, you're about to be a mom.
Yes.
So it's like, could you even imagine like helping yourself and your daughter do something like that?
No, I would never. Like, I can't imagine. Like,
I would be so curious to know,
hope that.
if she was here today, like where her mind was at in that moment. Because did she need them at that point, or do you think
she did need them? We were in a car accident in 2001, and it left her with an injured leg.
Okay.
And her leg had never healed back fully.
Right.
So she still had like the pins and screws and plates and hardware to kind of keep her leg in place. And she suffered from daily pain. Won't say that she abused them.
That was my next question. Okay.
She didn't abuse them. I think she took them as prescribed.
Okay. I think
That's interesting that she said that her mother took medication as prescribed, in her opinion and memory. With her mom, she likes to put it usually negative. So I'm surprised that she's going a little light on this one.
in the book, I was shocked to find out that Christy and Dee Dee knew each other.
Yes.
Before your dad and Christy were together.
Yes. Laura, Christy, and my mom all knew each other.
That is so interesting. So
Crazy.
Was that a point of contention? I believe I read in the book that it was a point of contention. Dee Dee felt like Christy sort of took her place and was with your dad. Is that right?
Correct.
That's why I just went, So the tension there between Christy and her mom has been, it goes way back for years. That's interesting because there was a time that Gypsy was not allowed to really have a relationship or any real conversations with her birth father. And she was told by Dee Dee, her mother, for so many years, like pretty much saying, your dad doesn't want to be in your life. He abandoned us, and guilt tripped her a lot. And now she's super close with her father. While she's been behind bars, her dad has been involved in her life, and obviously the stepmom, Chrissy. But it's interesting. I wonder if Dee Dee, her mother, took that out on Gypsy, and that's why she didn't want her father to have a relationship with her. It was a little bit of revenge, being spiteful, and being hurt.
I am just, so your dad and Christy actually grew up together.
Yeah, they met in high school. And
Okay.
So, it was a small town.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like everybody knows everybody. So yeah, they kind of grew up together and went to school together and stuff like this. So they were always friends. And when my dad started dating my mom, Christy was still just a friend. but my mom always felt like there was maybe something more, and that jealousy kind of grew from there, and there was always contention between the two.
Did you know that before writing the book, or did you?
I knew that from
You did?
I did know that because often my mom would say really mean things about Christy
Okay.
to me growing up. So yeah,
You had
I
the-
knew that they did not, or at least I knew that my mom didn't like Christy. So it wasn't until after I started dating your dad that there was this back and forth tension.
Yeah. That is so interesting. Have your feelings changed at all? Like, did you not like Christy growing up because of what your mom said?
Exactly. So I mean,
Okay.
growing up, my mom always used to tell me that Christy was like the home wrecker. She's the other woman.
So Gypsy was pretty much conditioned, brainwashed to believe negative things about Christy. Gypsy acting out as a child where she wasn't really so friendly to Christy, or she just pretty much followed the orders of her mom, like don't talk to them. That's actually normal of a reaction of a child, mostly in divorce situations. There's parents that know the children are going to follow what they're being told, and they have learned behaviors. So her seeing her mother be so against and, aggressive when it comes to Christy and the father, Gypsy is going to side with her mother, want to be protective of her mother, and she's going to be in unity with her mom against them. So that's actually totally normal.
Woman. Like she was always branded the other woman.
Right. So she didn't have her own identity. So you
Correct.
sort of took on what your mom felt, which, I mean, when you're young and you only have the one parent in your life, what are you supposed to know?
Exactly.
You're just going by what you're taught.
Yeah.
In the book, you talk about a half sister, but it wasn't clear if that was Mia or if there's another half sister.
I have two half sisters.
So you have Mia, that is Christy and Rod's, and then you have another half sister.
Yes.
And do you have a
Wow.
relationship with her?
We are friends on Facebook.
Okay.
So we communicate through Facebook. We have met once earlier in the year.
Okay.
We all got together, and it was great to have, like, my dad had been wanting a relationship with all three of his daughters.
Okay.
And
That's
so
nice.
one day when I was in town, my sister Facebooked me, and she's like, "I'd like to meet you." And so it was great because I had me, Mia, and her there.
Right.
It was great.
And so has your dad maintained a relationship with her, or she's kind of been separate from everybody?
She's I would say she keeps her distance in a way that she has a family. She has a son.
Sure.
So I think
I'm gonna guess, and I'm gonna say she just doesn't want to be that much in Gypsy's world in life because she's such a public figure now, and everything is on social media. And if it's not on there and it's being kept secret, it's then to be aired with Lifetime. So that's probably why the other half sister does keep her distance, because she does not want to have her family jeopardized or put in the public eye. Understandable.
all of the media stuff really just kind of puts her in a protective mode, which
Right.
is understandable.
For sure. And so your dad was sort of like, I mean, he's
Damn, how weird was that? Gypsy said the same thing that I said. Understandable.